We were all of us, born into a very broken world. A world at war. Every heart is wounded, male and female. If masculinity has come under assault, femininity has been brutalized. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Ruben Gutierrez, part of the Pon podcast, and I'm always here to not find the answers, but in order to move to the next level of being a human, or as I like to call the integrated human, is by asking more questions. And I'm always questioning things. Obviously, if you're listening, I hope you're a long-time listener. And if you're new to the Ponder podcast, this podcast has gone through, this is its third evolution. And I'm happy to see where it will take us in the future. And in this current style of podcasting, I do some solo ones. I have guests on every now and again. And I also bring my partner on to discuss relationship dynamics, as we've been together for coming on 9 years soon. But anyway, I hope you're having a great day. If this is the morning and you're in the midst of travel, hope you're enjoying a cup of coffee. I have a cup of tea right here. And today we're going over a book review / book summary of one of my favorite books of the year so far. And I'm going to do a few of these of some of the top books. I read a lot of books. Not all of them will make it to becoming a summary. If you follow me on Instagram, I share all the books that I read. Some of them are just, great to read, but I don't think I learn too much from them. But that's the journey in reading and learning, right? Is that not all books would be great. This was one that unexpectedly was great, because I knew I'm not a religious person. I knew I had a lot of religious connotations to it. John Eldredge is a Christian, and some parts of Christianity I strongly disagree with. But I'm not here to judge. I'm always here to question and find the goodness in everything if I can. I'm very much a pessimist at heart. I tend to find the worst in things first before I find the great. That quote you heard earlier, we'll discuss it. But I'm going to go some of the notes that I took from this book. So I read this book a few months ago, and it was one of those books that made me feel. And I always say, those are the books that I love the most. I get goosebumps when I'm reading them. There are moments in the book where I'll close it and I will just think about what I just read. It's rare that a book will do that with its stories and just I don't know how to explain it, but the best word I can use is with its heart. You can tell that the writer put a decent amount of heart into their writing. Some books you just don't feel that. I've been reading consistently every single day for the last, I'd say, more than 8 years now. So since I was about 21, I've been reading every day consistently. Sometimes I miss a day. I'm not gonna lie. But for the most time, I'll get at least a page in when I can. So I'm going to say some quotes. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw that I've been doing quick excerpts from specific books. I did do about 2 to 3 excerpts of this book, but because it was so good, I decided to turn it into a podcast and really go through the entirety of the book. Now, this is not going to be a long podcast because I don't highlight every single page. But I'll go over quotes and then we'll discuss what those quotes are, or at least my perception. Hopefully you will be urged to take up the book, because this is my journey, the way I read the book and the ideas that come to me and how it intermingles with my own experience. The vast majority of other books that I have read, I have come to my own conclusion of what this book means to me. So I hope that it inspires you, motivates you, gives you something to think about and take with you. And at the same time, I still highly recommend reading the book so that you can find answers for yourself within. All right, guys. So let's just jump right in here. First quote from chapter 1. Man was born from the outback, from the untamed part of creation. And ever since then, boys have never been at home indoors, and men have had an insatiable longing to explore. We long to return. It's when most men come alive. As John Eldredge said, when a man comes to the mountains, he comes home. The core of a man's heart is undomesticated, and that is good. Now, when I read that, and that was the first chapter, by the way, it was one of those quotes that really took me aback because it's how I've been feeling. During the pandemic, it was really difficult because we couldn't really go outside for at least 3 to 6 months before they were like, okay, we can go outside because we kind of get an idea of how this thing works, but we'll social distance. So I remember going hiking. I live in Northern California, and Northern California has a lot of mountainous regions, a lot of trails, a lot of hiking, a lot of outdoors activities to do. And that's why I moved here, because back when I lived in New York, there was rarely any of that. And if you did go to any kind of park, like Central Park, for instance, you still see buildings in the back. And to me, that's not what I wanted. I want to see the background filled with hills and mountains and beauty, nature's beauty, in this case, not humanity's beauty, because we do have our own beauty. But I believe nature's beauty is, you can't compare them. They're two completely different things. So when I read this, I definitely felt that. Like, I never liked the whole office thing, so I was excited that work from home became a thing. And I know that currently, as of September 12th, 2022, there's a lot of back and forth between like being in the office, and there's good to and bad to them. And I agree with some of that. And then there's a lot of advantages to working from home, and one of those being that you don't have to be cooped up in an office sitting in front of a screen for hours at a time. I think over the 80s and 90s, the reason why we're seeing such a rise and more people becoming comfortable discussing their mental health is because they were in that for so long. They didn't realize how much it affected them mentally in their bodies. And I think that I definitely feel, when I'm in nature, I feel at home. I feel like happy. I feel a sense of, I call it a big sigh of in my entire body, like a finally, because I live in a pretty nice apartment. There's a lot of right angles. There's not like a lot of nature. I'm looking out my window right now, and there's a big building in front of me. There's no really that much nature to look at. I mean, I have plants around, which is great, but at the end of the day, when I look outside, I want to see mountains. I want to see nature, right? Which I'm working towards, right? To live somewhere that has more of that. And as a man, I definitely feel that, I was lucky that I was able to I didn't have a person tell me that I had to be all suit and tie and button up. I hate suits. A lot of people disagree with that. I mean, I love some of the people who wear suits, really believe in excellence and things of that. I love that. Don't get me wrong. And you can do that without the suit. You don't need it. It's just a societal trick that we created, that a suit requires. I understand what the history of it. I've read it where, we did that so that we can differentiate between, this animalistic side, which is wrong. To read the book Iron John, which I'll do one of these on as well. And then, when you're at work, you have communion there. Everyone else is wearing suits or some form of a suit. So you feel like you're part of a tribe. And that's the original idea of why they came to be. So, but at the same time, it's too, how can I say, it's too restricting. I can't move my body the way I know they're coming out with suits that you can, but at the end of the day, I'm covering a large part of my skin, which is not allowing the beautiful sun and vitamin D to touch it, which is something that we need a lot more of because we spend too much time indoors. And that leads me to the second quote, which does talk about the business world. And I quote, "Where the majority of American men live and die requires a man to be efficient and punctual. Corporate policies and procedures are designed with one aim, to harness a man to the plow and make him produce. But the soul refuses to be harnessed. It longs for passion, for freedom, for life." And I think that's a big issue I have right now, because as humanity, we create these amazing things. Technology and everything we've created is astounding. I mean, we're animals by nature. It's something we tend to forget, which is why I like the book, like the Iron John and things of that sort. And we have a reptilian brain. If you look at science, we're more controlled by our emotions than we think we are. We believe that we're very logical, but we have a lot of unconscious biases that control us, and a lot of hormones and other internal functions that control us more than we actually think we have free will when it comes to the brain. And there's great books that you can read around like dopamine and how that controls us, and The Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, which is another top book of mine, where, biology, you learn about that. And mind you, biology was one of my favorite classes when I was in school, public school back in the day. And I can see why it was one of my favorites, but I digress about that. Us men particularly, and maybe you connect with this if you're a man listening. If you're a woman listening, you might connect with this too. I mean, there's a great book of women. I think it's called something, Women That Run with Wolves, I believe. I haven't read a lot of it. I've read some excerpts of it, but it's a beautiful homage to the wild woman, as Iron John is to the wild man. Highly recommend listening to both. Having my tea. So we long for that passion, for freedom, for life. I still long for it. I still work a 9 to 5, and there are days where I am like, I'd rather be doing this because this is what I'm passionate about, is learning, reading, talking to interesting people. Like, that's the passion, that's the purpose that I'm working for, and that I know will give me more freedom in the future versus being tied down to anything. And that leads to, when it comes to, and this is more particularly for men. So if you're a lady out there and you have a man that you truly care about and they don't understand this idea, I highly recommend having them listen to this, having them read The Way of the Superior Man, and they'll have a better understanding. And it's just one sentence. Life needs a man to be fierce and fiercely devoted. And I think that goes back to a man just not allowing anything to, his purpose is everything. And there's a few quotes that I'll touch on that go into that. And when he finds his purpose, he needs to be fiercely devoted to it. It's great that there's a huge movement for us to take breaks, to not work 80-hour work weeks and things like that. There's a huge push for it. And I think it's amazing because we, we'll have time to do other things, spend time with our families, and, take up a hobby and do other things that are not just solely work. Because one of the biggest regrets in human life, I think there's a book based on it. I'm forgetting the title right now, but it is that, I wish I didn't work as much as I did, right? But when you're working on your purpose, it does not feel like work. So it's something to think about. And then there is a quote by C.S. Lewis that goes, "Safe? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good." And that's the idea of comfort. In the last podcast I released with Manny Dueñez, the career doctor, we talked about this. We had a little excerpt around imposter syndrome and growth. And in the growth section of that, we discussed that, being in that, when something feels too easy or you just feel bored, you don't have enough risk. And as a man, risk is everything. We love to dabble in that. It is scary, but it's meant to be scary. You're meant to feel that fear. You're meant to feel that anxiety. It's fueling you. That is actually a good thing. You're being fueled by those things. Those things give you energy. They don't suck away the energy if you know how to use it. Now, obviously, that is, check with a therapist first, because some of us have way more anxiety than necessary, especially if you have a mental illness or something in your body that produces certain hormones or biological functions that are in overdrive. That can be possible as well. But for the most part, and for most people, it's good to be uncomfortable and to feel those nervous negative, and I put that in quotation if you're listening only, because it's not necessarily negative. Everything that our body gave to us is meant to be used for something. And occasionally, for some folks, it may be in overdrive. So that's just something to check on. And then that continues throughout the book. So he does talk about men's purpose. So this quote is, "Without a great battle in which a man can live and die, the fierce part of his nature goes underground and sort of simmers in a sullen anger that seems to have no reason. Men are angry and we really don't know why." And this one really hit me when I read it. I remember this because I put down the book. And I put down the book because I noticed how angry I was. And if you follow me on Instagram or you listen to these, it doesn't seem that way. But I was an angry child. And eventually I'll talk about that on the podcast, about like my anger, my moments of anger, the moments where I would just explode, things like that. And it wasn't until it was like in my early 20s that I realized that I thought it was bad to be angry and that I shouldn't showcase that anymore. So I stopped. I like trained myself using meditation and all these things. But recently, I began to understand that, again, going back to that idea of like, we need to feel all the emotions, and they're all built there for a reason. And anger is one of those. Anger is probably one of the most beautiful tools to allow you to be creative, to allow you to produce, to give you the energy to produce something into the world. It's when you're angry about something. It's like, take a look at that anger. It's like, where's this coming from? Why is this happening? Right? And he says most men really don't know why, because we don't. A lot of what the world has built is not built for a man to be in his wild self. Iron John really digs into this. They trap us. They put us in a bubble. They say you can't do that, and we don't. And currently is being like that more. And the reason why is because there was just terrible mentors, terrible leaders in the past that would teach these kids, these young men, to be a man in the wrong way. And that has affected us in a lot and has scarred us as a society to say, like, men, the patriarchy cannot exist. It is bad. But that's not the case. We need both. All right. Just like going back to that quote I started the podcast with. Because anger is a useful tool if used correctly. And I'll just leave that at that. And if you have a lot of anger in you, please take up a martial arts, go to jiu-jitsu. Trust me, it has helped me more than I can ever imagine. Then, as I read through the book, he has a chapter and he has also a book on relationships and marriage and things like that. And his wife has written a book with him around it's like the female version of this book. And this one quote really stuck out to me right here. Emasculation happens in marriage as well. Women are often attracted to the wilder side of a man, but once having caught him, they settle down to the task of domesticating him. Ironically, if he gives in, he'll resent her for it, and she in turn will wonder where the passion has gone. Most marriages wind up there. A weary and lonely woman asked me the other day, "How do I get my husband to come alive?" "Invite him to be dangerous," I said. "You mean I should let him get the motorcycle?" "Yep." She shrank back, disappointment on her face. "I know you're right, but I hate the idea. I've made him tame for years. So, ladies, I'm pretty sure you're listening and saying like, "What? I didn't do that to him," but really, unconsciously probably did. And obviously, we tend as men to kind of scale back things because we're tired a lot of the time. We are exhausted. Being a man is, I'm sure being a woman is difficult, but I don't know because I'm not one. But being a man is really tough. There's a lot that we put ourselves through. And I know there's a big movement to say like, no, we don't have to do those things. And that may be true for a very, very, very small selection of the male or masculine population. Because if a man, you truly ask him in the midst of being around other men, how does he feel about being, quote unquote, domesticated? He will, if he's honest to himself, he'll probably be like, no, I need to do more. And whatever that dangerous, and put that in quotes, is for you, find it. In this case, the man wanted to get a motorcycle. Fine. Maybe some of you take up some martial art. I go to jiu-jitsu. It's dangerous. It's easy to, injuries happen galore. But it's my dangerous currently. That may change in the future. But find what's dangerous for you and do that. It's something that I abide by all the time. It's literally my North Star is be kind and dangerous. Because it's like kindness will take you a long way. It's good to be kind to your fellow human. You never know what they're going through. And at the same time, humans are horrible creatures. I mean, look at crime and war and all these things that we've done and still exist. So you need to be dangerous because you never know when someone might try to take advantage of you. You need to be prepared for that. Be kind to a certain extent. So in the second part of that quote, he says, our society produces plenty of boys, but very few men. And I always say this, if you listen to podcasts for quite a while, I've said this before, so sorry for being a broken record, but our society is this leadership, and I'll put it in quotes, these leaders we've had are all boys. They're all boys. I think the last man, based on like my knowledge and looking at past presidents, was probably JFK. And Ryan Holiday has a lot of his stories in a lot of his books, whether that's Courage is Calling, Stillness is the Key, things like that. JFK was pretty much probably why he was assassinated is because he did not allow the Congress and all these political people step all over him. He wasn't perfect, obviously, and what human is. But he was probably the last man president because he didn't allow these people to step on him versus the last few. And people take qualms with Trump. He was also one that pushed a lot, but he just had bad policies, and I didn't agree with a lot of what he said as well. I wouldn't say he's a man. He's still a boy in many ways. So when you look at leadership, there's just very few masculine men who will take risk, be able to say no to these very powerful people and powerful companies, and move towards a place of good, whatever that good may be, because some people will still view it as bad. That's just the reality of having 8 billion people on the planet, and I think, 330 million in America. So there's that. And if you have thoughts about that, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I am always wondering and always questioning things. The JFK thing, that's my belief. It may not be yours. I don't know. But yeah. And then going into the next piece, it's around the father and not necessarily what the father is, but what having a father in our lives produces for us. So, and he talks about the father in the book as being like father, talking about the omniscient father, which is God, because Christianity. So I just thought of that because I'm not Christian, and God, the universe, whatever you believe in. For me, it's just a universal like oneness. So I thought of it that way. But one of the things that came up was that, and this goes back to what I was talking about earlier when it comes to purpose. Excuse me. A man needs a much bigger orbit than a woman. He needs a mission, a life purpose, and he needs to know his name. Only then is he fit for a woman. For only then does he have something to invite her into. So there, and this is probably a topic I'll discuss in the next relationship podcast, so stay tuned. But there is, do not get in a relationship at a young age. I feel like a lot of men tend to do that because we are full of hormones and we're full of this idea of love and oneness because of movie, society, your parents, all these things. But unless you have a great leader as a father who, puts you through an initiation into manhood early on, then, and you don't, most men nowadays are lost. We're a generation of lost men, lost boys, I would like to say. We don't have a purpose. We don't have a mission because society makes that difficult. For us, college is becoming ever more expensive. There's actually too much opportunity, I think. There's so many different things to do, so many things of interest that a man gets confused and doesn't know. And I believe we're moving into a future where you just won't do one thing for your whole entire life and be like, I got a degree in finance, I'm going to be an accountant forever. No, I think the future for us is leading to, I will do probably 2 to 3 careers in one lifetime. Especially like now, seeing a lot of people pivot in their careers, which is why I've been very fascinated by career stuff. I'm going to have more people discuss that, especially when it comes to Generation Z. I'm really fascinated by what they're going to do and what they're going to bring into the workforce and how that's going to look different, because I plan to own a company one day and I'd rather know this now than later. But anyway, once a man knows, what he means by know his name is that's that initiation phase where your father kind of tells you, like, you are now a true embodiment of your name, right? And this falls into your last name, which is very important, which is why we get that handed and passed down to us, because, our biology, our genes, all that, we're built with, you can say, like, preloaded software, when we're born because of our parents' genetics, and then we build on top of that and upgrade and update that software as we live and gain an experience and train and do all these things, right? So technically that original software is not what you'll be in the next 20 or 30 years. If you look at Microsoft Windows like 1 compared to like the most recent one, what is it, Microsoft freaking 20? I don't even know because I use Mac, but it's a huge difference, completely different. There's still probably some core things there, but at the end of the day, it's completely different. So you want to do all those things. Find your mission, find your purpose, build on that. And then when you have some sense of success, or you know what you're doing with your life, you invite your woman into it. Now, that doesn't happen for anyone. When I met Karina, I was not in that space because I knew none of this. It actually built that well-being with her, which was very difficult, and that takes a really strong woman. And at times, you have to understand that us humans do get weak, and you have to just trust in the process in those situations. But the best way to go is just do it solo, do it with a tribe of mentors and friends and peers and things like that before you invite a lady to be your life partner in it. Anyway, the masculine journey always takes a man away from the woman in order that he may come back to her with his question answered. A man does not go to a woman to get his strength. He goes to her to offer it. You do not need the woman for you to become a great man. And as a great man, you do not need the woman. So that's where it comes, where a lot of people may get this like caught up, because it's like, in order for me to be a great man, I need a woman. It's like, no. Do you need somebody in your partnership? No, you don't. to be honest, you got to build that strength within and be in a place whether she's here, right? Your lady is here to help you, to and I have a quote that I'm going to go over later, to inspire you. That's what she's there for. If you abide by traditional masculine and feminine, masculine and feminine ideals, because people are trying to change that, and great, try it, but will it work? I don't know. It's a grand experiment. So when these people are talking about that it's going to look different, it may, but I think there'll be consequences to it. Actually, nothing is perfect, by the way. Like this traditional masculine feminine is not perfect, but when we have a better understanding of it on a spiritual level and go deep down, and we can accept it and try not to fight it and resist it, I think it could be one of the greatest things that happen. Not only that, I just say that because it's been my experience of being in that space. Anyway, so find your own strength, and you find that in many ways, and that's through doing your own work. Trauma healing. We all have trauma. We all have it. Like, you just have to figure out what it is and then work through it, and it's something you'll carry that burden on for the rest of your life in some shape or form. It won't come up every day, but when you're stressed and backed into a corner, that's when it'll come up for sure. Anyway, moving on. True strength does not come out of bravado. Until we are broken, our life will be self-centered, self-reliant. Our strength will be our own. So long as you think you are really something in and of yourself, what will you need God for? I don't trust a man who hasn't suffered. I don't let a man get close to me who hasn't faced his wound. Think of the posers you know. Are they the kind of man you will call at 2 a.m. when life is collapsing around you? Not me. I don't want cliches. I want deep, soulful truth. And that only comes when a man has walked the road I've been talking about. And that was so key, because I have maybe I can count on my hands how many guy friends I have that I will call at 2 a.m. and trust that they will be able to help me through a situation, a really difficult situation. I haven't had that happen, but always prepared for it. I've had friends come to me and call me at those times to support them through something. And it's beautiful when you're in that space to either, help a person or be helped by someone. It's one of the greatest feelings. It's the true epitome of vulnerability. And when you have that in a masculine friendship, it is something you have to cater. It is sweet, sweet nectar from the God-given tree, right? You don't want those posers, those people, those guys that you probably hang out with to just drink and watch a sports game. And once you start talking about something too deep, they, let's say you say, like, I'm going through something. It's like, leave that bitch. And it's just like, that's not helpful, man. Like, ask questions, find out, is that something that he wants to do? Maybe it's just they're just going through a downward spiral in their relationship. But eventually they'll get out of the cave. Every relationship goes through its ups and downs, its valleys, its hills. Like, it exists. That's the beauty of life, that we go through these too. And I love when he said this, because it's just, this is why we need male friends. This is why we need a great, father figure, if that's God for you, the universe, Allah, whatever that means to you, like some, figure to look to that represents the father as a man, at least. A man needs a body to fight. He needs a place for the warrior to come in him, to come alive and be owned, trained, seasoned. If we can erase in that fierce quality in a man, hook it up to a higher purpose, release the warrior within, then the boy can grow up and become truly masculine. A warrior has a vision. He has a transcendence to his life, a cause greater than self-preservation. And one of my favorite warriors, because he does this so well, was Musashi. Thanks to my brother Jesse, who used to be co-host of this podcast. He bought me the book Musashi for my birthday, I think 3 years ago, two years ago, something like that. And it's probably one of my favorite books, because it really shows a warrior in his full embodiment of masculinity. Not only is he a badass warrior, like actually fighter. I mean, he never lost a battle, but he was vulnerable. He understood his feminine side, so being, creating art and writing and poetry and all these beautiful things he did. And you see him in the beginning as a boy, and going through life as a boy, and as he meets mentors on his journey. It is literally the hero's journey in a book. He meets mentors on the road. He goes through, the woman aspect that we talked about, where he's in love with the woman, but he can't be with her because he has a journey, he has a purpose to fulfill. And throughout his journeys, he just, just like a Buddhist, like he just becomes so like focused. And his vision of where he wants to go in life becomes so crystal clear. And you see that throughout the book. It's a beautiful story. It took a while. It's like 800 pages, but that's important to know. Just having a warrior like that. And us as warriors, it's us going out to work, to go out there. It's a metaphor for going out there and attacking life and attacking the purpose and making sure that we create good. And as we do that, we create safety with our partners and our families. But currently in our society, a lot of boys have some form of addiction, and he says here, a man's addictions are the result of his refusing his strength. Addictions come in many forms. The phone being one, video games, and I'm not like a person that's like, no, we shouldn't play video games. There's a lot of masculine, at least in the manosphere, saying that games are like ruining us and all this stuff, but it's really, again, like everything else, is a tool how you use it. Even the phone is a tool. How do you use it? So, we're addicted to porn, masturbation, like all these addictions. It's because we're afraid to see who we truly are. And I've been in mushroom ceremonies and gotten that message when I've been in the ether, I like to say. And noticing that I have my own addictions, right? Whether that is the phone, I've been addicted to my video game, I've been addicted to masturbation and porn, like things I would discuss maybe far into the future. But these are just things that we truly need to let go of, and they're really hard, which is why you need a group of friends to keep you accountable. And when you fail, because you will, they can hold you up and support you through that. Because as the quote just comes next, don't even think about going into battle alone. Don't even try to take the masculine journey with at least one man by your side. So all you need is one friend, one really good friend to be by your side. Don't think you need a bunch. Don't think you need a whole fraternity and all this crap. Like, you don't need that. You need one. Start there, one really good buddy who will, when you're going through the shit, when you're in the cave, you're about to fight that dragon, you have a man by your side who can support you in that fight. Sometimes we got to do it alone. Not knocking that we sometimes it just needs to happen. But if you can have a man by your side, it will make things 1,000 times easier. Trust me. I've been there. And just as I mentioned before, how does a good woman help her man to play the man? She inspires him to be that man. She'll challenge him when he's not being that man. Karina does this to me a lot. When she challenges me, and I may get frustrated, and then after some time I feel like, oh, I was totally being a little boy. My little traumas from my childhood were showing up, even though I've done the work. But like I said, when you're stressed, you're in a corner, those things tend to go away. So, and that can mean, stressed at work, you haven't worked out, your sleep has been shitty, your diet has been shitty, all these things accumulate, and then next thing you know, you're getting angry for the smallest things. I always say, start with the basics. Are you getting enough sun? Are you getting enough movement? Are you eating the right things? Are you breathing? Are you sleeping well? Are you breathing well? Things like that. Like, start with the basics before moving into the more complicated things, like let me go see a therapist and all these things. And we come back full circle. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And I noticed that a lot of people are not alive. This question has stuck with me since I read this book. Because I've had moments this year where I've not felt alive, where I felt like I'm just taking up space, where I felt like I'm being useless to not only myself, but to the people around me, my family. Do they still consider me a great man? Are they proud of me? Like all these questions. My partner, am I doing good? Am I making sure that we're safe and secure? Like I have pets now that are like children. Like are they being taken care? Like all these things, right? We, as men, and this is where I'll leave it, so we can come to a close. As men, what the questions we have to ask is, what will it take for us to make us come alive? What will it take? Is it friendships? Is it experimenting? I don't know what my purpose is. Okay, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? So when I've coached young men in my last job, and that's what I asked them. Like, hey, I'm doing this training, but I don't know if this is really what I want to do. I'm like, well, you're trying, right? That's all that matters. Because what else would you be doing, right? Maybe playing games. It's not gonna get you far. It's like I play games to learn something. I love video games. I've always loved video games. So I'm not telling you guys that are listening that video games are the end, and that you should stop because you have to focus on other things. No, I think that occasionally they're okay. If you're playing like I used to 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 hours a day, that's a problem. But you're not playing every day. Maybe on a weekend you drop in for 4 hours. That's fine. You're not doing it every day, and that's your like way of just nice breather, right? Even though most games don't be a breather, it's actually really stressful. Going back to my Call of Duty days, and I used to be very stressed when I was getting my ass kicked, for instance. But if you play a game with a great story, like The Last of Us, or God of War 2018, or Horizon Zero Dawn, games with a great story, they could pull you in. To me, that's just reading a book in a form that I get to be immersed in the book, in a 3D realm, right? Like that's what a video game means to me and how I view it. So when I play a game, to me it's like reading a book, but just it's longer. It requires much more depth because I have to put my full attention and focus into it in order to truly appreciate the art that it is. So these are things, right, that can help us, and that can help us. We can learn lessons from these things. So where are you learning your lessons from? What can you bring to the table that the world truly needs? It's just a question. Do you need to answer it right now? No. But ponder that question. Ask yourself that question occasionally, once a month. Write about it. There's a journal that I have that I write every year. Usually I do it yearly, where I like ask myself the same questions like this. What do I need to do to get to where I want to be? Are my goals and intentions for my life still the same? And now I'm adding this one is, what does the world need from me? And what do I need of the world? Because, hey, I have this tattoo that I got this year called, it says, I create as I speak. Not this year, sorry. I got it last year. I create as I speak. Because that's truly what we do. We're creating our own reality in many ways. And I can only say that because it's been my experience of things that I write down, things that I say, and then 5, 6, 10 years later, I'm living what I said. And it may not be perfectly as I said it, but it's like, oh yeah, I said I was going to live in California. I did that. Right? I made it happen. I said I was going to go to Asia and live there for some time. Did that. I said I was going to make a certain amount of money. I did that. So ask yourself the questions. Ask yourself the hard questions. See what comes up. You don't even need an answer. What else does it bring up? Does it bring up other questions? Great. Follow that path. See where it leads. And remember, as men, we like to unknown. We like to take risk. It's actually embedded in us. We're just taught to not take them. We're just taught to be a cog in a machine. We're taught these things. But what happens when you start the unlearning process? That's where the true magic lies and true beauty. So ponder on that, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this single podcast with just me and a book in my notes. And there'll be more coming. Let me know if you really like this. Let me know maybe if there's a book you want me to go over. And I'd be happy to give that a read and go over it if it's something that I think it's very fruitful and useful. So thank you all for listening. Much love, as always. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.